we have seen, Sir Lawrence, a number of attacks, missiles coming in sporadically over the last few weeks to Kyiv, but today sounds like it's of a different order of magnitude in terms of the size of the barrage.
Yes, and I think this reflects the Russian concern about the Ukrainian counteroffensive making a point that whatever happening on the ground, they can still hurt Ukraine. Still, also, I think they just want to keep as much as possible of Ukrainian air defenses looking after cities rather than helping out at the front line. I think that's probably quite a major part of it. Of course, their timing isn't great because they did so as a delegation of African peacekeepers, would-be peacekeepers, were visiting Kyiv. So they may not have been wholly impressed about being having to go into air raid shelters.
Indeed, in terms of who these African leaders are, which countries are they from? What are we talking here?
Well, Sir Ramaphosa, South Africa is the most important, also from Cameroon. Africans, along with many outside the West, have taken the view that they don't want to get caught into being for or against either side in this war, but because it's so destructive and terrible, that it should be brought to a conclusion. So they're exploring the possibilities of negotiation. After Kyiv, they're moving on to meet Putin in Russia. Their difficulty is that neither side are very satisfied with the status quo, both trying to improve their position. So whether or not they can make any progress, I tend to doubt. But that's what they're trying to do. And of course, from the Ukrainian perspective, it doesn't do any harm for them to see the way that this war is being waged. And I think they were also taken to Bucha, where there were the atrocities revealed when the Russians withdrew from there in March, April last year. So I think the Ukrainians are probably using the occasion not so much to find a peace, but to demonstrate just how difficult it is to get a peace while Putin is acting the way he is.
Yeah, it seems strange that you would have this sort of missile barrage when Ramaphosa from South Africa was visiting, because it was only a couple of weeks ago that you had President Putin in South Africa as part of the BRICS meeting. So that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These sort of challenger economies, if you like to think challenger economies to the G7, talking about ways in which they could improve their own positioning in the world, have closer ties, etc. And now you've got them having to shelter in an air raid shelter because of incoming fire.
Yeah, it's not great PR. I mean, Zelensky, I think, realized, perhaps faster than many in the West realized, that these countries, while not particularly sympathetic to Russia, were very nervous about being lectured by the West, who they believe to be hypocritical in these matters, about who they should support and how. So he's taken a lot of his own initiatives to explain Ukraine's situation, try to get at least their support and understanding. And he's had marginal success, probably most importantly with China, which, although tied in many ways to Russia, is now taking a less pro-Russian view than it did. So this is quite an important part of the whole diplomacy surrounding the war. And we'll see what happens in Russia, but I can't imagine this was a move that will have impressed the Africans.
Indeed not. Now, to move to the wider counteroffensive, we waited a long time for it coming, but it does seem now as if there is genuine movement on some of the front lines in differing parts of the country. There is proper pushback now from Ukrainian forces.
Yes, it's slow and this is early days. I think we have to be quite careful. The Ukrainians, at some cost, it hasn't been easy, have pushed forward, but they haven't reached the main Russian defensive lines yet in the south, which is people assume is the main area. They've had more success in some ways around Bakhmut, in Donetsk, and there is a possibility because this is an area where Russian defenses are not so strong, and where Russian forces have exhausted themselves, and to some extent exhausted the Ukrainians as well, in this long battle that lasted for months to take the city, that they may actually find it more productive to move there. But strategically, it's less important than the south. So there's a number of things going on. The main body of the Ukrainian offensive capability has not yet been committed, and I think they're waiting to see if there are areas where they can make a breakthrough and then push on. But what we have to keep in mind that what they're trying to do is very difficult militarily, and also I think what's important at the moment is a lot of the most effective Ukrainian action is with artillery behind the attacking targets behind the Russian lines, troop concentrations, arms dumps, fuel dumps, logistics, command. The more that they can degrade the Russian capability there, the easier it will be when and if they can make a breakthrough.